Hey everyone. Sorry for the different camera today. I still haven't hooked up my normal camera after streaming outside yesterday, and the sun's coming out. So I'm thinking I'm going to go back out there and stream for a little bit since the trial starts up shortly. So yeah. Anyways, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I am EKC or Erin. Basically what I like to do here is just point out and highlight some crappy behavior from all of us, myself included. Though today we're not talking about me. We will be talking about some targeted instances of Jen McCabe's testimony over last week or the week before. I don't know, day 14, 15, and 16. That's what I know. So without further ado, let's get started. So this first clip I have is from, I think it's from day 15, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway.
You informed them, Kerri.
It might be nice if I turn that on, huh? Yeah. It's early. Give me a break. Okay.
Is here going over timeline, end quote.
Correct.
So you reported back to Brian, Nicole, and Matt that Kerri was where?
She came over my house.
And you two sat down and went over a, quote, timeline together.
Peggy spoke to Kerri.
Yes or no? I didn't ask about Peggy.
Well, that's where the timeline started at.
Before we go any further, I just want to point out that Peggy is Peggy O'Keefe. I believe that's John O'Keefe's mother. And I just find it really tacky, like even if this is true, that she's like name dropping the mother of the deceased, the mother of the victim here. It seems very inappropriate, my opinion.
Did you ask Kerri, or did Kerri show up at your house and quote unquote go over a timeline with you?
Kerri showed up asking to sit down with me to do a timeline so we would remember everything that had happened.
And you wanted to be super helpful.
So there she talks about a timeline. I'm going to let it play.
About that, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask it differently.
Sure. You wanted to be helpful to Kerri Roberts.
The two of us were trying to figure out what had happened to our friend.
And so you made sure that you...
Oh, that's right. There's an ad in this. Shoot, sorry. Are we going to this tonight?
How
a timeline for her, correct?
I didn't make sure of anything. She was the one that asked me to do it.
And not only did you create a timeline, you then reported back to your group, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, that she was creating this timeline with you on February 1st, 2022. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's that, okay, which I find interesting. Now, let's listen to this next one.
Fair, things of that nature.
Well, they were at the bar, so they know who was there and when they left.
And ask if you know what they know. I'm asking if you've ever spoken to them about these issues. Yes or no?
I can't be sure if we've spoken about the timeline.
And you've talked to them about when they got there and when they left.
I have no.
So I'm curious, did she and Kerri Roberts like put together this timeline that she said in the first video, but then she failed to share it with the rest of the class? I mean, did she go over a timeline like 3 days or 2 or 3 days after his body was found? Or did she not? Anyway, moving on. This next one I want to check out. I have to keep disconnecting and reconnecting for every tab because for some reason something's up with my StreamYard. So sorry. This right here. Okay. This I thought was funny because she kind of contradicts herself in this same clip, like within seconds.
A 70-pound German Shepherd having any reaction?
No.
Matter of fact, you don't remember the dog being there at all, correct?
Correct.
You never saw that dog, correct?
I have no memory of seeing that dog.
Memory.
As you see here today, you cannot say that the dog was here because you don't have a memory of
I don't have a
ever
memory.
seeing it.
I did not see it, no.
See, she didn't want to say at very first, I did not see the dog. She says, I have no memory of seeing the dog. So then the lawyer like concedes to this and says back at her, You don't have a memory. You don't remember seeing the dog. And then she comes back and says, I did not see the dog. That comes off as like, it doesn't matter. She doesn't really buy into either answer. It's whatever one is going to be combative to this dick of a guy asking her questions in front of her face. That's how that comes off. Just saying. My opinion. Anyways, moving on. These next two, I think, are just very, very, very telling.
I went to Elizabeth Proctor, the wife of Michael Proctor's house.
Who does Elizabeth Proctor live with?
Michael Proctor.
So you actually went to Michael Proctor's personal residence, didn't you?
I did, yes.
That was in September.
Now, she's going to be talking and explaining this harassment that these families have been receiving. And I want to say right here for the record, if you're doing any of this harassment, you're the problem. You're a dick. Knock it off, okay? None of their family members, well, except maybe your husband, but whatever, no. None of them deserve this shit, okay? These kids can't pick their parents, all right? Just don't be that guy. Don't be the person who lowers themselves to the actual perpetrator's standards and levels. You know, that's kind of what separates, you know, decent people from the not so decent people. So please don't do that. Please don't.
September of what year?
But more to the point, I want to point out how she describes these things. I'll show you what I mean.
23. I went over.
23.
Yes.
Why'd you go to Michael Proctor's house in September of 2023?
I met Elizabeth Proctor in approximately July or August of 2023. We are two mothers that are being viciously terrorized and harassed by social.
We are two mothers that are being viciously terrorized and harassed. We are being viciously terrorized and harassed, okay?
Media. Things that were stated in this courtroom and allegations that were made have torn our lives upside down. We receive hate letters saying that they
I'm
hope
asking
things.
you why?
We receive.
I know you want to give a narrative.
She gets to answer this, Mr. Jackson. The door's
Which
open.
I am going to say, just on a side note here, I kind of get why instinctively, initially, the attorney, the cross-examining defense attorney here, tried to like nip this in the bud. But as you'll see, she's basically telling the jury that the general consensus among the public is that she's full of shit. Just saying.
Your Honor, you should answer the question why she went to the house as opposed to the narrative behind her motivation.
It sounds to me like she's explaining why she went to the house. The door was open, Mr. Jackson.
Go ahead.
We receive letters, we receive emails, we receive calls. People drive by our house. There was a rolling rally outside of my house.
See how
where
it was
people-
our house. It's our, when she's talking about herself and Proctor's wife, okay? Our, we are mothers, our. But when it comes to just her, it's not her family. It's my family's house, our family's house, or whatever. It's her. They drove by my house. And there's more. Keep listening.
People just screamed at us. They take pictures of our children. They took a picture of my daughter and put semen on it and said property of some named blogger that I think the defense is very familiar with. So that is why myself and Elizabeth Proctor got together. Michael Proctor was not home. We are two mothers trying to get through the unthinkable together.
So you were
So
upset.
she brings up an instance with her daughter, but she doesn't talk about how this terrorized her or anything, how it affected her daughter. She just brings it up as though it's like a heart-tugging gripe, which it is, don't get me wrong. And then she goes right back into how this has been for her. Listening.
About the public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of John O'Keefe.
I was outraged because I am a state witness that is being tortured because of lies.
I was outraged because I am a state witness that is being tortured. I am being tortured. Not her daughter or her family. I am being tortured.
Because of public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of a police officer, correct?
No, it's a social media witch hunt.
So there's one example. I'm going to show you another now. There we go.
One blogger, and they all met and they decided to go to different houses. So Michael Proctor had been made aware of what was happening. So he had reached out to tell.
So she says right there, Michael, this is on a side note too. Michael Proctor was made aware of what was happening. So he reached out to her. So that kind of makes it sound like he just found out and then reached out to her, but let it keep
Tell me, what was going to be happening and how they had set up some cameras. It was a Saturday. I had just come home from vacation.
See, she makes it sound like she just came home from vacation to this debacle, basically, to this rally being planned or whatever, performed out in front of her house. And while she was gone, be unaware of all this, the trooper came by and set up cameras for her. And she's coming home to this news.
With my children and my husband. Mrs. O'Keefe picked up my two younger.
And again, bringing in John O'Keefe's mother again. I think that's who she's talking about. She just says Mrs. O'Keefe. I'm assuming it's John's mother and not John's sister-in-law, but
children, and brought them out with her so they wouldn't be home for this. And my two older children and my husband were in the house while about, 50 to 75 people came to my house. They screamed, they yelled, "There's a murderer."
50, 75 people. My kids were home. They came to my house. Okay, not our house. They came to our home. That's how I would have said. I would have said these people came to our home, my family's home, where my kids live.
They just caused an absolute ruckus outside.
And prior to that, did you have any conversations with Proctor or any other troopers from the state police about knowledge of that incident occurring prior to its occurrence?
Yes.
And as far as setting up sort of whole cameras around your house to memorialize whatever was going to happen?
Yes.
Here's my problem with that. So she's asked, and she admits that she had prior knowledge of this. In other words, you realize, okay, she knew about this before she came home from vacation. So why? It just seems, again, tacky. Like, if it is, in fact, John O'Keefe's mother, which I'm assuming it is, because I think that's why she said it like that. Why would you drag her into this? This is the last thing that woman needs, I think. And that, even if it's his sister-in-law, it's the last thing they need too. But I digress. I just want to again point out how these are things happening to her. She's the one being harassed and terrorized. She's the one whose house they're going to. She's the reason. She's the target. She's the focus. Okay, not, I don't know, like her and her husband, or that it's not that they came to our home, my family's home. It was my home. I'm the one terrorized. I'm the one harassed. I'm the one who's targeted here. I don't know. That just seems awfully odd to me, especially since she includes a story there about how that disgusting thing happened with her daughter, which it is disgusting. And if anyone watching this is behind it, fuck you. Shame on you. Okay. Okay, so now these three stories, why were they even told? Seriously, I want to know why. Here's Kerri Roberts on the stand.
Any sort of conversation was going on in the car as you were driving?
There was some conversation about a woman I didn't know that was Bella's mom. And she said, Bella's mom never liked me. I think Bella lived near Jen's sister, maybe. I don't know. Some conversation about Bella's mom, and Karen said she didn't like me.
And do you recall where you were in your travels when that topic of conversation came up?
No, I don't recall.
Now, in reference to following that, what, if anything, did you say in regards to any other sort of women?
Any other what?
Here's my question. Why is it that when Jen contacts Kerri and Jen, and she's in the car with them looking for John O'Keefe, someone who all three of them are reportedly, to care very much about. These two, Jen and Kerri, especially Kerri, can't stop bringing up John's ex-girlfriends. Like Karen is obviously very distraught and upset. By their own admittance, that's the case. And they want to just rub shit in her face while they're at it. It just seems like a very odd time to bring that up and to bring it up so consistently, because this is only one of several times.
Following that conversation in regard to Bella's mom, who you didn't know, what, if anything, did you say or introduce into the conversation?
Fairview Road runs along Spring Street, I think it is, Spring Lane. So Spring Lane and Fairview are both off at Chapman Street, and there was a woman he dated that lived on Spring Lane. So when Jen was telling me where her sister's house was, I said, I don't know where Fairview is. And she said, it's near Spring Lane. And I said, oh, where the dance instructor lived. John had once dated a dance instructor. And then Karen said, do you think he could have gone there? Do you think that's where he could have been? No, I was just using it as a reference point. She said it's near Spring Lane. And I knew that the dance instructor lived on Spring Lane.
And just to be clear, when you say the dance instructor, this would be for his niece, Kaylee?
Correct.
And you indicated that the two of them, being Mr. O'Keefe and the dance instructor, had dated at some point in the past, correct?
Yes.
How long ago?
Yeah, how long ago?
Oh, it was when Kaylee was little. She was probably like 5.
So almost 10 years before this date that you're driving away.
So 10 years prior. Now, excuse me, I just realized I haven't plugged in my microphone, so I probably sound like shit. I'm going to do that right now real quick. But notice how she said 10 years prior, okay? Which I find to be really odd because audio, mic, and okay, now I probably sound a little bit better. Notice though how she said 10 years prior. That's about when John dated this dance instructor. So for 10 years, this woman is what, in Canton or right around Canton, the place where she grew up, right? And she can't know this. She doesn't know this street by any other reference point other than the fact that this dude she knew in high school once dated this dance instructor over there 10 years ago. Why is that your association still, and to the point where you verbalize it, you say it out loud in front of his girlfriend as you guys are driving around looking for the guy who's missing? That's some fucked up shit, I think, in my opinion. Anyway, here's this next one.
No, more general. Like, where is it? Type.
Did he make any reference during the time that you were talking to him to anyone he was with?
No.
And now, as far as the second call, you indicated, what did you use exactly as sort of a geographic locator?
My daughter and his niece's very close friend lives on a side street off of Fairview. So I just said, go past Bella Street, and that's at the bottom.
And Bella is someone that's through his niece, John O'Keefe would have known, correct?
Correct.
Now, at this time, or
I want to just stop there and point this out, that this was a conversation she allegedly had either on the phone talking to John or text. I'm not quite sure. But it just seems odd that his ex-girlfriends are brought up so often in one night, especially this night of all nights, but it could just be a coincidence. But why? Why are these two women so fixated on the women John used to date like 10 years prior?
at this time, what, if any, relationship were you aware of between Bella's mother and John O'Keefe?
They had dated
I'm going to allow it.
They had dated briefly years before.
Briefly, 2 even.
Now, Was that sort of the substance of the conversation that you had with Mr. O'Keefe? In that second phone call?
Yes.
Now, after that second phone call, did you speak to Mr. O'Keefe on the phone at any point in time after that?
No.
Okay, that's all I had there. Okay, so moving on, we have one more of this subject matter.
And as we got by different landmarks, she then started, screaming, asking if John could be at certain people's houses.
And whose houses was she asking if John could be at?
If she could be at Bella's house.
Referring to the directions that you had provided the night before?
Correct.
And so that would have been
What did she say that?
referring to the directions that you had provided the night before?
Bella's house.
John could be at.
If she could be at Bella's house.
Why did he just say, or why did she, now I'm doing it. Why did she just say if she could be at Bella's house? She, when they're talking about John. Like, I just noticed that.
Houses was she asking if John could be at?
If she could be at Bella's house.
Referring to the directions that you had provided the night before?
Correct.
And so that would have
So it's it's Jen's testimony there that Karen, while driving around looking for her boyfriend, was missing, and she was, nervous wreck about. She suddenly has it in her mind that he could be at a woman's house that he briefly dated like a decade prior. Really?
been,
Which I am going to say, I'm going to make the argument that even if that were true, it's very likely because these two women, while in the car with Jen, could have stopped talking about his ex-fucking girlfriends. Maybe.
Bella was a child who was around the age of Kaylee and your daughter, correct?
Yes.
And there have been some years in the past dating relationship between Mr. O'Keefe and Bella's mother, correct?
Yes.
And so Ms. Reed is saying that in the car that morning as you're driving over to Fairview?
Yes. She asked, could he have been with Ashley? And I looked at her and said no, because to me that was a crazy idea. And then Kerri had mentioned, oh, do you think he could have called somebody else that lived on a street over? And she started screaming, who's that? Who's she?
And you recall who Kerri referred to?
Yes.
And who was that?
A woman that John had previously dated.
And was that anywhere recent?
Okay, so there's two different stories here because Kerri tells it as like she's just using this woman's house as a point of reference for, geographically speaking, to be told or to determine whereabouts Jen's sister lives. Okay. But now, according to Jen, she tells the story, and it's actually Kerri who brings it up. Okay, fine, but it's actually Kerri bringing it up because she's putting it out there as a possibility as to where John could be that night. Oh, so you mean that this night where John's missing, you think suddenly that he decided to go to this dance instructor's house, who he dated like a decade prior, because that makes sense. How? And I mean, it's obviously this woman wasn't any importance or any current present role in his life because Karen didn't even know who the fuck she was when she heard this. Like, who is that?
Time to when you're driving around on January 29th when they had dated?
No.
So similar to Bella's mother would have been years before.
Correct.
Years before.
And so when Ms. Roberts said that, what, if anything, did the defendant say?
She was just spiraling, yelling about Ashley, who was Bella's mom, and just talking what I thought was very irrational about John maybe being with her.
You guys are the ones bringing this shit up. Who's irrational here? Like, okay. These next few clips, these are just little tidbits I noticed about personality or attitude, I guess you could say, or maybe even a little humor, I guess. So this one, this, I think, I don't know. I wonder if it's kind of telling, like, it's like she let something slip that she wasn't supposed to, maybe.
I never searched a 227. That is not reality.
But the 624 search did exactly mirror the search that, according to this report, took place at 227, correct?
I'm sure Celebrate will be able to explain it to you. I can't.
And then of those 3 searches,
Okay, so how is she so sure that Celebrate will be able to explain it? I'm sure they'll be able to explain it to you. I can't. Like, I don't know. It sounds to me like possibly something slipped there. Like she knows something that's about to come from this testimony with the cell phone extracting company or whatever. Or either that or she's, I don't know, she's very misled. This one here, though, I thought was very telling because, like, well, no, I won't say telling. I think that a lot of people in her position might possibly have acted this way, but not so much on a witness stand. I could see this happening over dinner and conversation or argument or whatever, but not on the witness stand. Just listen to how mad she gets.
listening.
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained.
At the end of the day, you were eavesdropping on an interview that Kerri Roberts was having with law enforcement in their official capacity.
No, I was sitting eating dinner, and some of the things, obviously, I overheard, but I was not even. I'm saying
Right there.
there's a possibility if I'm sitting in this room eating dinner and someone's in another things, obviously, I overheard, but I was not even. I'm saying there's a possibility.
Like, you almost see her come right out of her face there. Like she has to lean forward. She gets so mad. Like you can envision that if the person in front of her was in front of her and she was free to do so, she would have grabbed the person by the neck as she said this. Possibly, in my opinion.
Possibility if I'm sitting in this room eating dinner and someone's in another room talking, you can hear bits and pieces. Was I eavesdropping? No. Is there some big cover-up story? No.
Well, why does
Say
does your testimony keep evolving? A second ago, you told this jury, you said, I couldn't hear a thing. All I could hear was voices, like muffled voices from the other room. She was going on and on about something.
Yeah.
And then when I confronted you with the text message where you said, she's telling them everything, now it's, well, I may have heard a couple of things. Which is it?
No, she was going on and on and on like she did.
Okay, so that part right there. And I can't believe I cut off the end of that because she says she was going on and on and on like she does, meaning Kerri Roberts. This is a line that's repeated several times throughout testimony. And I think even at one point, Kerri Roberts says this about herself, saying, yeah, that's what I do. I go on and on, that's what I do, like I do, or whatever. It seems like they're really trying hard to paint this vision of the only reason why these certain things slipped out of our mouths or past our circle here is because Kerri Roberts just can't shut the fuck up. Anyway, moving on. This, if I was drinking when I heard this, I would have spit my drink out because it had me laughing my ass off.
I wouldn't say, well, let's count them. Was there 4 of them? You're saying over and over and over and over. It's a bit extreme.
I see. So you take issue with the way that I phrased over and over and over.
Well, it's misleading, I believe.
I see. Okay. Well, let me see if I can try this in a non-misleading way, Mrs. McCabe.
Okay.
Okay.
So at least
That right there. She's like, okay. It's so passive aggressive. Like that is totally, I'm okay. I don't like to admit this about myself, but I can be a little bit passive aggressive. I think I get it from my mom. She was very good at it. And I mean that in a very good way. But this is exactly how I would have replied. I would have been like, it's very misleading. Well, I'll just, and then, well, let me try and explain this in a non-misleading way. Okay. Okay. Like, just almost like, thank you. Thank you for seeing things my way and for altering your behavior. Thank you. Okay.
the way that I phrased over and over and over.
Well, it's misleading, I believe.
I see. Okay. Well, let me see if I can try this in a non-misleading way, Mrs. McCabe.
Okay.
So at least one of
Like-
us.
Sweet, calm, you know, proper demure, just innocent. Okay.
I'll withdraw.
But you watch her face after that, and you see that she's mad as hell. Like, she's so mad. The way she purses her lips, and then she's going to drink water, and she does everything she can to fight rolling her eyes. But they do kind of roll there for a second.
I'll withdraw.
See?
You consistently reported back to the group how Kerri Roberts was doing with the police, didn't you?
I would update them after Kerri saw and spoke to the police. Again, we were all trying to figure out what had happened to John.
There's yet another.
See, I'm not so sure that I'm sold on her knowing or having any involvement in something, in an alternative theory regarding what happened to John. I'm not sure I'm sold on that. I will say this much. Something else happened, for sure. I do not believe for 1 second Karen Reed had any involvement in this. And I do absolutely believe that for whatever reason, this is being treated in a very dishonest and shady way in efforts to pin the blame on the most logical target. And that's Karen Reed. That's my opinion. Whether or not Jen McCabe had anything to do with it, whether or not something sinister and intentional happened, I don't know. I have no idea. Well, I have ideas, but I don't know any good possible other alternative theories here. I just know that I don't believe for 1 second it was Jen McCabe. Or, I mean, it was Karen Reed. And I don't believe Jen McCabe had any prior knowledge or even knowledge throughout this regarding anything. Maybe after the fact, but whatever. So I don't think she's necessarily lying here. But she's so adamant to sell this for whatever reason that it doesn't come off like she's confident or relying on the facts as she knows them. It sounds like she's trying to sell something that's not real for whatever reason. Doesn't mean she's involved. She may have learned about this after the fact. And sure, maybe legally there's an argument or whatever for accessory. I don't know. But my point is it doesn't mean she's guilty of something regarding John O'Keefe. It just means she's guilty of not being honest on the witness stand. And that's what I think it is.
Text from Brian's wife, Nicole, on January 29th, and this is on page 2226.
And also too, I should, I think I'm going to do a video montage of that. I think I'm going to just stop and record every time she drinks a sip of her water and see what the current context of the conversation is at that moment. Because I think that might be interesting. If you're watching this and I didn't do it yet, don't take my idea. You can. You'll probably do it better than me anyway. Okay, there was that. Okay.
She says, quote,
This last one last clip. I just laughed my ass off when I heard it. It was funny.
was the amount of snow coming
Objection,
down
Your Honor.
sufficient?
So let's hear the.
So the defense attorney there is starting to read a question and answer of Jen McCabe's during her grand jury testimony. And before he could even finish, the prosecutor objected. And the judge is like, let's hear the question first. Let's let him finish. So now listen.
The question.
Was the amount of snow coming down sufficient to obstruct your view of the vehicle, or did you have a clear view of it? Answer, I had a good view of it.
Objection.
The objection is as to the form of the question, the reading.
No, that's okay. I'm going to allow the question.
Damn it, why can't he memorize his lines? I mean, questions like the rest of us before court. Why does he get to read from like a cheat sheet or something? Like, why not just put up cue cards for the defense attorney so he can read off of them as prompted? Like, that's how it sounds. Like, what is he not supposed to make and read from notes? Is he not supposed to recall testimony verbatim for his question or whatever to establish grounds for his question? Why is the reading objected to? I mean, I'm no attorney. Maybe there is a reason or whatever for it. I don't know. I can't see what that is because they've both been doing this throughout the entire trial thus far. So I have a hard time believing that now for this one time, there was this one issue or whatever. So it really does just sound like the prosecutor's just all big mad that the defense attorney didn't memorize his shit beforehand and he gets to read from a cue card. Okay, I'm done. So this was a little bit of like a fun kind of video, a little bit of snark, you know, covering some of this shit and some behavior things and maybe possible telltale signs of things that I noticed. I know that I didn't cover like the big talking points here because honestly, there's a ton of channels who covered it, and I agree with all of them. So really, but this was these little things that I picked up on the first, second, and third time watching this that I just wanted to bring to the forefront here because I feel like, okay, so like I feel like each of us we're not the sum of one action. We are the sum of all of our actions. So it's these little ones, these little actions that build up over time that kind of create our character and give us our sum. So this throughout this trial, I feel like these little instances, what's going to give us the sum of Jen McCabe's character along with anyone else. So that's basically what I'm kind of building and showing here. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to go, I think, set up outside and start streaming. The trial's already started for today. And I want to hurry up and get out there so I can cover it. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.